identified as Alan Bradley. And my work with Alan Bradley had me traveling a lot, and I spent some time in the Los Angeles area, and I looked up an old friend who was living in Manhattan Beach. And he invited me down for a party. So when I went to that party, I discovered it was pretty crowded. It was an apartment occupied by 4 boys, and some of their friends who were girls had a fire, and they had to move out, and so here's this whole bunch, 8 people living in one little apartment, 4 boys and 4 girls. Well, that kind of stuff was new to me. New to everybody in those days, back in the late 50s. But I thought to myself, if I ever come to California, I'm going to live in Manhattan Beach. And lo and behold, a couple years later, 1958, I was sent out to the Los Angeles sales office and looked in Manhattan Beach, couldn't find a place. So I lived for 9 months up in Westwood, and I enjoyed that. It was an interesting place to be. I'm glad I had that little experience somewhere else for a while. But in March of 1959, I moved to Manhattan Beach. I found my treasure apartment, 226 35th Street. And 226 35th Street, just within the last several months, has been torn down, and then something else is going up there, and I haven't really taken a close look yet to see what it is. But at that time, that north end of Manhattan Beach was something. Ponchos, that's where all the airline people hung out. And at that time, Manhattan Beach was an absolute airline jungle. All pilots and stewardesses. A lot of the pilots hung out at Ponchos, and so that's where I hung out to be with the big boys, I guess. And I met some interesting characters, and sometimes wonder if I'd ever fly again after meeting those guys. So, and I suppose all of you, I don't know if you're all familiar with the old Ponchos, but they serve Chinese food and steaks. That was their bill. And more than one time I would see people come up to the door and they talk to Poopsie, who doubled as busboy and maitre d', and they just turn around and leave because they thought they were going to get some Mexican food. Well, I took part in the airline jungle part of it. I did marry a stewardess, but I didn't meet her in Manhattan Beach. We met on a flight I was coming back from Hawaii on a red eye, and I met this stewardess, and it was all night, and I kept her awake, I guess. I talked to her all night, and then we dated a year or so we got married. So I didn't meet anybody right in the Manhattan Beach scene. We lived in my apartment for about 6 months before we bought a house, and that apartment I rented for $125 a month. And just a few years ago, I was driving by the place, and I saw that there were people going in and out the front door. We had a parking place, and I went up there and asked if I could go in. It was a realtor person showing the prospective tenant. And I asked the tenant, I said, will you tell me, what does this rent for now? $2,300 a month. Now, I should have bought that house and stayed in it, I guess. But that's pretty much, I had some other, what did I do? I got myself up here. I'm pretty good. When I lived in Westwood, I lived in an apartment there for about 9 months. And you ever remember the comic Mort Saul?
Yes.
He had lived in that apartment. He had just moved out, I guess. I never met him, but he had lived in that apartment. And then some friends I met in Manhattan Beach much later had lived in the same place I lived in Westwood. So, okay, Ponchos. But I did love living up there in El Porto. El Porto had a lot more bars then. I would like to mention just a couple of things here, and careful, get the hook. I like to remember old Manhattan Beach, and you hear people talking about, right now, we want to keep our small town character. Well, I don't know how you can do that, except don't build tall buildings, because the town's already small with 4 square miles, but I guess it's a small town feeling they want to try to keep, and that'll be hard to do. But by the way, in the Beach Reporter for March 31st, there was a whole bunch of letters about this, what's going on downtown, in case you didn't get to see that. I haven't read them yet, but they look very interesting. Okay, who remembers when Vaughn's was a lumber yard? And
Who worked at Vaughn's with your son?
my son worked at Vaughn's, yeah.
So did I.
Learned to be a checker there. And my youngest daughter was born on the day that Vaughn's opened. So that's how I remember how long Vaughn's is. I would just read off some places that I'm thinking of. There were so many filling stations. There was a filling station where the kettle is. There was one across the street, and then down the street was Buck's. Can't remember Buck's last name.
The Chevron station?
What?
The Chevron station?
No, I think Buck had a Flying A or something like that.
Flying A, yeah, across from City Hall.
Yeah, that was Buck. And I wish I could remember his name. And then farther down toward north was Sam Baruti. So there were 4 filling stations I remember were in Manhattan Beach. And then places like Cornet and Mr. Johnny's, and I'm talking to people, we had 2 drugstores, we had a hardware store. And then up in north, who remembers the Turf and Sand?
Oh, yeah.
The Turf and Sand, which had the line between County and Manhattan Beach go through it, and so you had to go to one end to drink when the other end closed. Becker's Bakery's still there. God bless Todd Becker for taking that over.
Yeah.
And Hercules, which is my social headquarters. And my wife lived just up 11th Street. We courted at Hercules. And the Frigate and the Hatch Cover, those places. I hear a confession. I never went to a movie at the Lamar.
Oh, really?
Shame on me. And then, what was the grocery? The brothers had this grocery, and one of them was
Edwards on Rosecrans?
Edwards. It was Edwards, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. My wife told me once that the guy who started Trader Joe's asked Edwards if he could work there for free and learn the grocery business. Now, I don't know whether that's a legend or not, but I can remember Trader Joe's started out as a thing called L something up in Pasadena. I can't remember what that was called.
That was Wahlberg's work.
Okay, Colette's Liquor, that was my source of refreshment. So that pretty much tells you what I was doing in those days, probably a lot of the same things that you were doing. And so you could, if there's anything that I can fill, who has a question that they would like to remember? Oh, there was a bar on Sepulveda called My Ship. Remember that?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I had always meant to go in there, and one day I drove by, it was gone. So, but it looked like a ship. Hi, Sam. What?
And you didn't mention Cisco's right across the street.
Oh my goodness! Yes, Cisco's. Gary Moore, who was the recent owner of Hercules, used to work there as a bartender, and it was a low-ceiling place. And they had big bands in there. Cal Jader's big band, an 18-piece band, would get in there and just blast. So I'm glad you reminded me of Cisco's. Also, right up there across the street from where I live was a place called Chuck's Riptide Cafe. Chuck Fook, who was later a chef at several restaurants around here, Chuck owned that. And nobody remembers Chuck's Riptide Cafe. I used to call up from my work and I'd say, Chuck, will you save me a piece of pie? I'm coming tonight. And I can remember meeting Chuck in one of those kitchens later on. Okay. Well, Who'll tell me what I forgot?
Blue Book.
The Blue Book and yeah,
And players.
And players.
Players, the Players in the Blue Book. Briefly, there was a place called Jimmers, and what does Don say?
Don't forget the La Cita, 41st and Highland.
La
Where the
Chita?
Porto Market is right now.
Oh, really?
See that.
La Cita was a busboy there and made fairly good money back then.
Yeah? Well, I didn't remember that. Maybe that went before I came. I don't know. One of the things about downtown Manhattan Beach, because I was looking for restaurants, I wasn't married, and there were only 2 restaurants that I can remember in downtown Manhattan Beach. There was a place called the Skillet. I don't know if anyone remembers that.
Yeah.
And I think there was a Mexican restaurant called La Villa. And then out on the highway was the Brass Bell. And those were only 3 places you could eat in Manhattan Beach.
Mind if I ask you a question? That generally, at the corner of 39th Street and Highland, this is on the east side of the street, there was a house that had been turned into a Mexican restaurant. I once busboyed there, but I don't recall the name of it. And they had
That one
I think,
escapes
in the
me,
late
39th
50s.
and Highland.
Wonderful Mexican food.
Wait, was it called the Red Dog?
I
The Red
just
Dog,
don't
the Greek
recall the
family
name.
that had the Red Dog?
But I have a photograph of, a dim photograph of that corner with that restaurant with the window boarded up and a mural had been painted on a Mexican style.
Well, I can just say that it's been a wonderful experience, the time that I have spent in Manhattan Beach. I came here as a
Orville and
single.
Wilbur's too.
What?
Oh, I know you want to.
Okay, yeah, Orville and Wilbur's has come and went since I've been here. I've
Yeah,
seen-
that's right. That's more recent.
Yeah.
Did you ever get the Dietrichs?
Who?
Dietrichs?
Oh dear.
Who remembers Dietrich's? Oh gosh, Dietrich was a wild and crazy German. He was a Nazi. He really was. And he owned a beer bar there on the west side of the Pacific coast of Sepulveda, and he would serve vodka under the table. You go in there, you get a shot of vodka, but he only had a beer license. And I have at home an unopened wrapped T-shirt commemorating Dietrich's closing. Yeah. Oh, I'm good grief. You're very, very big help here. Helping me remember Cisco's and Dietrich's, and I remember the frigate and the hatch cover. Okay. Well, this is fun. I have. So that's pretty much what I have, how I got here and what I did when I got here. By the way, my wife died in '05, and I have stories about her too, but I'll tell them now. So I guess I can, how am I doing on time? Can I,
You got 15 minutes?
yeah, more or
You have 15 more minutes, yeah?
I do?
Yep.
Well, I don't know if I can spend 50. Okay, I welcome any of your comments on some of this old stuff. I've enjoyed talking about.
Did you bring slides
Yeah.
to share? Did you bring something to share?
Oh, did I? Yes.
Oh, okay.
Listen, you put me in touch with Heather, and we did all this yesterday.
Great.
Because I was late getting in touch with Heather. And yes,
Who'd your wife fly for?
United. And my wife, once our kids were grown, she went back to work in the flight office for Northwest. And we enjoyed passes there, and when she died, I got a survivor's pass, and I would fly on Northwest, and just in the few years after she died, I would say, are you an LA crew? Yeah. Do you know Connie? Ooh. And they'd give me beer. And yes, go ahead.
I just have a question. When I was single, when I moved to Manhattan Beach, my roommate said they knew where the great Gildersleeve lived, that they could never remember. And does anybody here know
Yes, I
where?
forgot him. Harold Perry lived here, and I never knew where he lived, and I can't remember if I even ever saw him. And another guy who was at one time the owner of Ponchos, is Frank Jenks. Remember, he was a character actor. He would be a
Yeah.
cop or a cab driver or something like that. I never saw Frank Jenks. Those are the two celebrities.
Do you know who owns Cisco's?
Who owns Cisco's?
Yeah.
Who owned it?
Yeah.
Dickie Smothers.
I can't say. Maybe I did know at one time. Clint Eastwood?
Is it Dickie or Tommy Smothers?
I thought it was Dickie, but
I'm not sure.
my-
One of the Smothers brothers.
one of those.
Who?
One of the Smothers brothers
Oh, really?
and Clint Eastwood and then two other guys.
Oh.
One of them was real big. I don't know who.
I met one of the Smothers brothers. I think it was Dickie. He came and he knew my neighbors, the Comics. If any of you know the Comic clan, they used to live across the street. Some of them, Kenny and Diane. Okay. Any more? Well, or shall I tell you about the band?
Were you a turtle?
Okay. All right. Where is my property manager here? Okay. She made that.
Oh, good.
Okay. What's up? Okay.
Patrick's Day.
The band started. It really wasn't a band. Some of you may have known Dr. Sid Pattison. He practiced down in Redondo. His wife Ethel. Sid also died in '05. Ethel's still living. She's 90. And Sid and I started to play together. I hadn't played for 15 years, and I saw an opportunity to get a horn I wanted. So I got a cornet, and Sid sat and got his clarinet, and the two of us played in his living room and just to fool around like that. And a young man came to my office who was a brilliant trombone player. The three of us got together and we started a band. A three-piece band with no rhythm instruments. So it was, you can see it was a little funky from the beginning. But I named us. And people ask, how did we get the name Hyperion Outfall Serenaders? When I first came to Manhattan Beach, I noticed there was a big structure out in the ocean off where the Hyperion plant is.
Yeah.
And I said, what's going on out there? And someone told me they're building the Hyperion Outfall. And those words stuck in my head. So about 10 years later, when I started a band, I called us the Hyperion Outfall Serenaders and made it stick. The only negative with that, people will think we're a chorus. Don't they realize that bands can serenade too?
What year was this? And picture. Yeah, the picture.
This was about, 70, something like that.
72.
Was
Yeah,
that?
it got cut off. But
Okay, good. 72.
72?
Yeah.
Daily Breeze.
We were hired, it was our first paying gig. We were hired by some people in an office building on St. Patrick's Day to lead a 2-block parade down to a nearby bar. They paid us $125.
Wow.
So how do you like that? That's our first paying gig.
Do you know Dennis there?
Oh, there is the three of us.
Wow.
And got our picture taken by the Hyperion plant. You can see me and Sid Pattison is kneeling down there, and the man on the right is the trombone player Dale Van Scoik. He played trombone in the Purdue marching band, and he was good. Okay, we didn't get paid for this, but it was another early gig. This was the grand closing of a beauty shop in Hermosa Beach. So you can see we've got some interesting gigs. I guess that's the only thing we did. Okay, there we added Don Reichman. Who knew Don Reichman?
Yeah.
Don was the principal of Meadows School, and later became an assistant superintendent or something like that. But Don was a wonderful string player, but he didn't own a banjo. And I had an old banjo at home that I loaned him, and he could play that thing like gangbusters, and he immediately bought a better banjo. And that was we call that the second herd, because the first was a three-piece band, and now, lo and behold, we've got a banjo player, and he would drive the band. The rhythm he produced, and since he wasn't a really trained banjo player, he cheated. He used a, they call a capo or a capo, a little thing you put across the strings to kind of change the key. But he was just a remarkable guy and played with us for many, many years. And Don died, he moved up to near Santa Rosa. He died several years ago, and I can't remember what year he's gone. There we are in a more formal, and there we have added another trombone player because our other trombone player got transferred to a different office. He was out of our office then, so. And Jack Freeman is right there in the middle holding the trombone. And Jack has recently cut down his playing a lot, but that was what we call the second herd. The front, Sid Pattison. Behind him is Don Lastra. Who knew Don? He was a Manhattan Beach cop. Manhattan Beach, oh, and I should have brought this picture. Before, when he was retiring, he's still in uniform, and we staged a photo downtown where he's putting the cuffs on me for disturbing the peace. Okay, and there's just kind of a fun picture. Don Lastra made that. He put all that other stuff in there, but there was Reichman, Lee, Freeman, Lastra, and see it. All this. I mean, you must remember Ella Mae Morse.
Sure.
Sure. Cow Cow Boogie. Well, and who knows? Remember Ken Coulter? Ken Coulter was a teacher up on the hill somewhere and lived across the street from me. And he was a drummer and had his own little band. So we went in where he was playing one place and played with his band. And they had Ella Mae Morse there who lived in Hermosa Beach at the time. So that's one of the few celebrities that we've ever been photographed with, Ella Mae. And that's a picture we staged for some publicity thing. And sitting on the drum is Fran Freeman, Jack's wife, who joined us in playing the washboard. And we've got more people in there now, as you can see. There's no use naming them all now because you'll forget by the time I get to the next slide. And you don't care anyway. Oh, and this one, I like very much. We have a substitute banjo player, but here we're playing for the finish of the 10K race. We've played every hometown fair and every 10K race, which started a couple, 3 years after the fair began. So that's an annual appearance for us. Oh, here now, and I have, when you go out, I'll have on the piano there 2 stacks of postcards. You can decorate your refrigerator. And let's see, it was in '07. Bob Beverly, who owns the Shellback, had an artist do this mural, and I don't know how many of you have been in the Shellback in the last 10 years, but it's back on the south wall inside the place, way back toward the offices on the south wall. And been there. Next year will be the 10th anniversary, and I think we'll probably have to have a party down there. We had a big party for the unveiling, and Ethel Pattison, who I need to get to join this group. And who knows Ethel? Okay. Well, I'm trying to get her to come this morning. We just got back from the desert. But Ethel pulled the cord and unveiled this wonderful mural. And is that one? Yeah, there's one of the band at the time, and they're posing in front of the mural. In back, behind me, if you know me, is Louis Pasteur. He was one of those loyal aviation guys with Sam. Yeah. How many of you had kids go to aviation? And Heather went to aviation. I said to her yesterday when we were doing this that there's great loyalty from those aviation people to their school and to one another. That's quite a thing. Okay, there. Oh, yes. I live at 10th and Pacific, on the southwest corner of 10th and Pacific. And catty-cornered from me was a little modest beach cottage there. And by the way, when we moved in there, the famous volleyball player, Holly McPeak, lived there. She was a runny-nosed little 3-year-old, I think. And now some friends of mine just came out here and they rented a house from her, to my great surprise. Anyway, they tore down that house, but the fire department used it first as a practice fire. And we were having a band rehearsal at my house. We walked across and played for the fire department. we played, of course, Hot Time in Old Town Tonight. So that was our big experience with the fire. Is that the final one?
That's it.
Okay, that's a very hot number to end with. And well, I've given you a little bit of idea how this, we're very proud. Well, we became the official band of Manhattan Beach. When Joan Daughtonville, most of you don't probably remember her, she was a good friend. And we played at the City Hall when she became the mayor. And she whacked her gavel and said, my first duty as mayor, I will appoint the Hyperion Outfall official band of Manhattan Beach. So we haven't been challenged too many times.
What year was that?
On that, although there's a guy that used to write for the Beach Reporter, if you Google and find it, he wrote he just terrible stuff. He hated our band. And he says, this bunch of old drunks.
Accurate reporting, but.
So, well, is there anything that you'd like to know about the...
What year was that they made you the official band?
Oh, I don't, 75.
75.
That's what it says on my card. It says official band since 1975. Sure, I remember that exactly.
Are you guys come down and play concerts in the park this summer?
I don't know what we're going to do about the park this summer. I've got to go talk to them. We have had some difficulty with health reasons of our clarinet player. I got two of the best musicians just recently. Both ones I met playing in a big band. I also play in a band called the Beach City Swing, which is an 18-piece swing band. And if any of you are interested in dancing, I can tell you where we play. Dave Stanton born and raised in Manhattan Beach, lives in Hawthorne now. I met him at this band, and he had never played. He plays in the symphony. He had played in the symphony. He spent his life in music. He's one of the best musicians I've ever met. And Dave has played with me about 5 years now. And the first time he played with the band at a paying gig, it was some home for a party up on the hill. And afterwards he said, that's the first time I ever played without a piece of music in front of me. So we're teaching him to play by ear. And then I have a good trombone player, lives in El Segundo, and his name's Chuck Baldwin. But Dave is suffering from cancer and hasn't played with us a long time. And so that's slowed us down. We've got 2 gigs in April. We got a wedding party, and an anniversary, 50th anniversary. And then on the 30th, we play down in front of Bob Courtney's house in Hermosa, where they have that peer-to-peer walk. We play for that. That's something that's become an annual thing with us. But I'm not worried about the future of the band. I'm just a little bit concerned about when it's going to start again. We have no gig schedule. Of course, we'll be at the hometown fair and the race and some of these annual things we do. But so we're just having a little pause, and no chance of winding down yet. Okay.